Hi, and welcome to a new coffee break session hosted by PatentSight. My name is Goran, and today I have my colleague Sharbani with me, who is an expert in chemistry and one of PatentSight's in-house consultants. Sharbani, thanks for accepting my invite and great to have you here today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Okay, before we start, I would like to mention only a few words about PatentSight for all the participants that join us for the first time. PatentSight is a big data innovation analytics company from Germany, using its scientifically evaluated and industry-proven methodology to evaluate the innovative strength of companies by analyzing worldwide patent data. Our journey began in 2008 as a university spin-off, and today we belong to the big RELX universe, helping corporate clients, legal departments, research institutes, the European Commission, as well as financial institutions to understand the patent landscape better and to draw the right conclusions out of this. Okay, let's come to our today's topic of interest, which is referring to the development of technologies that are related to the field of agrochemicals. In the following 20 minutes, we will present you a global high-level overview on this by using our world-class patent data and analytics to ask and answer a few questions by using the PatentSight analytics platform. Sharbani, I only recently read an article on the current flooding in some southern provinces of China. It was said that nearly 3 million hectares of crops were damaged. This sounds pretty much to me, especially when considering that one of China's all-time problems is a safe and stable supply of food supply. China has the world's largest population, but only 10% of its total territory is arable land. Can you give us some information on how China is ensuring the efficiency of its agricultural product production in comparison to the US and other authorities?
Yeah, that's a valid point and quite relevant in today's time also. Let's first have a bird's eye view on the data that we have on the patents that are protected by the different agrochemical entities in different countries. On the left-hand side, we see a line chart representing the time evolution of the number of patents that are protected in this sector in each country by the agrochemical entities. What we see on the right side is how the patent portfolio in each country in this sector developed over time with respect to not only quantity, but cumulative quality. Now, if we go back to the history and think about a bit, the synthetic and chemical fertilizers that were being used in the early days had started to show signs of health and environmental hazards in the late 90s. They started to raise concern, and the general consensus opinion was to shift to something else, maybe biofertilizers. These days were also marked by the remarkable advancement in the field of biotechnology with the dawn of the recombinant DNA technology. Well, necessity is the mother of invention, and government policies and laws drive the direction of the innovation. Two major milestone decisions in the US paved the way for the biotech-related advancements in the agricultural and the agrochemical industry. The first one was that allowed the research universities to patent their invention, and the second was the landmark decision in the Diamond versus Chakraborty case, whereby genetically engineered microbes were granted patent protection. Few years later, the extension was given to patent protection to genetically modified plants. The focus shifted from external protection through insecticides and pesticides to internal protection through insect-resistant crops. The question comes then, how did that promote the agrochemical industry? The genetic engineering allowed to develop herbicides resistant in plants. Thus, with respect to such herbicide-resistant plants, the R&D was to develop the corresponding herbicides. Innovative herbicides were invented and were patent protected. The farmers that are sowing these herbicide-resistant plants are bound to this particular herbicide throughout the patent term. One of the biggest examples of this is Monsanto's Roundup, the glyphosate herbicide. This herbicide has one of the widest spectra of action against weeds, and it has been one of the most profit accruing product of Monsanto. This herbicide expired in 2000. Due to these pro policies that were adopted right from the beginning in the US, we see the number of patents protected in the US in this sector increasing consistently, as can be seen in the line chart.
Okay, wow. So when I take a look at this red line here, so that is representing China, that really reminds me of a hockey stick. What has actually happened there with China?
Yeah, this is actually quite striking, right? And this is a very interesting trend which deserves to be studied in more detail. China's agrochemical industry at the start was mainly thriving on production of off-patent pesticides for which either the patent term had expired or were not at all protected in China. The high rebate on the export tax and the reduced agricultural taxes that were granted by the Chinese government chronologically coincided with the expiry of the glyphosate patents. This led to Chinese agrochemical companies producing cheap agrochemicals and exporting them to USA, Canada, and other countries that grow glyphosate-resistant crops. Thus, if you look into the red line of China's chart, we see that in the period 2000 to 2008, there isn't much patenting activity. However, during this time, there were low-quality counterfeit pesticide products that did throng the market. Like the crisis we are facing now, there was another kind of crisis in 2008, the economic global recession, that affected the Chinese agrochemical industry quite negatively. The subsidies and the rebates had to be curtailed. While China was recovering from the recession around 2010, it had to face the reality of the hazardous effect of the overuse of synthetic agrochemicals. However, China was still concerned about this agrochemical sector, which was highly skewed in favor of a handful of foreign companies like Monsanto, Bayer, BASF, etc. China invested heavily in the government research on biotechnology and encouraged the development of local seed and biotech agrochemical companies. Specific visionary policies were adopted by China, such as the one spray three combination program, where a combination of three different herbicides were used to increase the wheat yield, introducing the national champions concept, whereby the state-owned enterprises were merged across the various industries, and strengthening its IP regime. The patent laws were reformulated, and China ensured the enforceability of the same. This led to simultaneous increase in the protection strategy in this sector by foreign companies, as well as the Chinese agrochemical firms focusing more on protecting their inventions in this industry. And that's why we see this hockey stick kind of a spike in the number of patents protected in this sector in China.
I see. Yeah, it's very interesting to see the correlation of your results and some of China's policies. And at this point in time, it makes sense to mention that according to China's #1 central document that can be seen as an indicator of policy priorities, modernization of agriculture has again been stated as a crucial part for China for the 15th consecutive year. So yeah, this makes really sense. And when I take a look at this green line here that represents Japan, so what actually happened to Japan? It seems that Japanese patent filings in this field of agrochemicals have decreased in the past year. Is there an obvious reason for this trend?
And Japan has been more cautious in its response to the advent of the genetically modified crops and the accompanying trend in the agrochemical industry. Japanese laws and regulations regarding this sector is more strict, lengthy, and time consuming. The Japanese companies, they preferred to continue in the chemical sector of the agrochemicals. Thus, the patenting activity started to decline over the years because the world was shifting, having a great paradigm shift towards these genetic modifications. However, it would be wrong to say that isn't any credibility in this. For example, the combination of one kind of herbicide and the herbicide resistant crops kind of farming has its own drawbacks. For example, the herbicides that they are supposed to work against the weeds, these weeds also develop resistance to the herbicides. And this actually happened with the Roundup herbicide for Roundup Ready soybeans. In such a scenario, it's the complementary chemical pesticides that are the go-to solution. Recent classification of glyphosate as a probable human carcinogen has further heightened public concerns. So as we discussed earlier, the policies of the countries, they affect the innovative activities, and that's how the chart is telling us.
Hmm. Okay, so and now that you have mentioned some company names, I think it makes sense to take a closer look at some of them.
Absolutely, this is the right time to have a look at how the current situation looks like. As we see on the bar graph on the left-hand side, we see the top 10 entities in the agrochemical sector with respect to the quantity. And we find there are a considerable number of Chinese entities among them. Thus, the policies that were adopted by China did get the desired results and desired response from the Chinese companies and entities in the private and the public sector. I would like to draw the attention to the ChemChina and Syngenta bars. ChemChina has owned Syngenta since 2010. This is just to highlight that a major portion, 88% of ChemChina portfolio is contributed by Syngenta. On the right-hand side, we see the development of the portfolio of ChemChina and Monsanto over time with respect to average quality and quantity. What comes to the light is that ChemChina has not only increased its number of patents, but these are actually good quality patents.
Hmm. So thank you for this. And after we saw an overall development of patents that are related to agrochemicals, I would like to go one step further. And you have already mentioned some interesting keywords like biotech. So is there something that your analysis reveals on new trends or disruptive technologies in this field? For example, the use of CRISPR technology in agrochemicals.
Yes, CRISPR should be discussed in today's scenario, right? And actually, it also makes sense in this sector. 2013 was the year of CRISPR technology. CRISPR-Cas9 technology made it possible to edit genomes. Now, in terms of agriculture, CRISPR-Cas9 technology enables more precise and less time-consuming manipulation of the genetic sequences compared to the conventional ones. Major agrochemical companies have already introduced this technology in their R&D and obtained some research outcomes already. This line chart that we see that it's an increasing number of patents in the CRISPR-Cas9 in the agrochemical sector in USA and China. This chart actually highlights the geopolitical imbalance across the globe. The patent office with having fewer number of patents in this sector is the EPO. The EPO already had several restrictive regulations and directions on the genetically modified crops. Plants whose genes had been edited with conventional breeding methods were treated quite differently from the patent perspective from those that were edited using biotech tools. This already led to reduced patent filings and protection in the EPO in the agrochemical sector as a whole. Many European companies shifted their base from Europe to outside Europe to pro countries like USA. For example, BASF, it halted the development and marketing of its transgenic crops for the EU since 2012. Now, with this CRISPR technology, more recently in 2018, the European Court of Justice confirmed and ruled that plants engineered using CRISPR-Cas9 would be subjected to the same regulation as those applied for the genetically modified crops. So if you look into the line chart, we already understand that while EPO has the precautions, restrictions, it's USA and China who have the patents.
So China and the US seem to be more receptive to genome modification in agrochemicals than, for example, as you already mentioned, some European countries. Let's take a closer look at the patent filing history of the US and China within this specific domain of CRISPR. Sharvani, tell us a little bit about this, please.
Yeah, you see, this is the filing year statistics graph of the patents that are protected in USA compared to that protected in China. This is so striking because the filing statistics show that in the agrochemical sector, there have been more patents that have been filed and protected in China compared to USA. Now, this technology was invented, pioneered in the USA. It has been lapped up by China. Mind you, USA is still leading in the application of this new technique in the medical and related fields. But China has overtaken this genome editing technique utilization in the agrochemical sector, as we can see in the chart. This again brings us to a very interesting news about Syngenta, now owned by ChemChina. Syngenta is building up a Beijing hub for developing new gene and genome editing techniques like CRISPR-Cas9.
Hmm. Impressive, really, really impressive how China caught up in a very short period of time, as we can see here in this bar chart. So taking the time into consideration, let's quickly move to another topic where I'm pretty sure that you have some interesting results to share with us. So when I think of traditional agriculture, it often comes, and this is what you already mentioned, it comes with a massive use of chemical fertilizer, pesticides or fungicides that all have a huge impact on our ecosystem. At the same time, we can see an increasing demand for organic food and an eco-friendly agriculture. Can we see some trends in a more sustainable way of developing efficient agrochemicals?
This is actually a very important topic to discuss in today's time. The tremendous advancements in the agrochemical industry have their pros and cons. The negative impact on the environment is one of the most notable of the cons. The overuse of synthetic fertilizer and pesticides has led to soil contamination, algae blooms, increased greenhouse gas emissions. Over application of fertilizer has led to chemical residues in the food that we eat. It has led to nitrogen infiltration into the groundwater. Consumers as well as farmers, farm health workers have all facing health problems. Even the most striking biotech invention, the herbicide glyphosate, it also had this negative effect, though it is much, much less toxic compared to the others. Glyphosate works on all plants that do not have herbicide resistance. So in that case, it is not only killing the weeds, it is also killing all the naturally occurring plants, and thus affecting the biodiversity quite adversely. A Chinese agricultural sector can't afford to face decline in the quantity or the quality of its product. China had to pass many laws, such as the Environmental Protection Law, that promoted to rationally apply pesticides whenever appropriate. Chinese Ministry of Agriculture launched the program of zero growth pesticide utilization by 2020 so that they can phase out the toxic pesticides in favor of biopesticides and more environmental friendly synthetic chemicals. It banned the highly toxic pesticides in forest, grasslands, and garden plots. Now, like other Chinese policies, this one also had the desired effect where the direction of invention in China in the agrochemical sector moved towards this environmental friendly agrochemicals. And as we see in this line chart, the highest number of patents regarding environmental friendly agrochemicals being protected in China.
So it seems that China is already on a really good path in terms of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to ensure sustainable food production systems and implement resilient agriculture practices that increase productivity and production. So I would say it's not far-fetched to say that while China is ensuring its food security and production, it is also very positively contributing to the ecological well-being. Sharbani, are you of the same opinion?
Yes, I do agree with you.
Super, thanks a lot. Yeah, once more, Sharbani, thanks a lot for this interesting presentation. And to bring this today's coffee break session to an end, it remains to say that if you would like to learn more about how PatentSight is evaluating the quality of patents, please feel free to reach out to me. I will be very happy to schedule a one-on-one session with you. And by this chance, we can also take a closer look at the companies that are behind our today's discussed topic. I hope you all enjoyed your 20-minute break. Have a great day, stay safe, and hope to see you soon. Goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, but if we have some time, we have a question from the audience regarding how we used, what strategies we used for the CRISPR one. So for the CRISPR technology, we use the third strategy and operator on the CPC code that relates to CRISPR. And for the climate change compliant, we use the CPC code Y02, which is related to the environmental friendly inventions. We just had the time to answer the question, and we thank you for the question.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Sharbani. And thanks
Thank
for the
you.
question. Goodbye to everybody.